Welcome. We're at the Henry Hotel. This is the Strategic Insights podcast. I'm lucky enough to be joined today by Walter Little. Walter, I'm excited to have you here for a number of reasons, but because you're Strategic's Technology Solutions Manager, you do some things uniquely different for a lot of our customers than what I am normally talking to them about, meaning you're solving issues for people that sometimes they don't know they have, or they find out they have after they install a product. But before we dive into the fun stuff of what your life is on a daily basis, can you give us a little background of how you came to Strategic and your time in industry?
Sure. So this is my second tour of duty at Strategic. I'm about 3 years into this one, and worked at Strategic as a consultant for about 3 years in the mid-2010s. I've been working in the medical device industry since the late 90s. Worked for a small startup company in Los Angeles for 15 years that made the world's first artificial vision for blind people.
Wow.
And mostly was on product development for them, but toward the end, started to get involved with the enterprise applications aspect of the business. They were using an older version of QAD, which helped them upgrade to Enterprise Edition, and we were working with the ETQ quality system and lighten up Salesforce and that sort of thing, and really trying to integrate everything together to build what we were expecting to be a booming business. And worked with Strategic a lot, and it made sense at a certain point for me to transition over to the consulting side, which was a great experience. And for about half of the time I was in that consulting role, I was on a full-time staff augmentation with one of our customers up in the Bay Area who was growing at just an insane clip. They went from being like a $30 million a year company to a $400 million a year company in like 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And so we were just scrambling to put in whatever we could to make the processes scalable and cost effective, and so learned a lot there, and then left to go back to the I company as the head of IT and trying to shore up that organization. So what I'm about is that I recognized over 25 years in this world that there is no, despite everybody looking, there's no one software solution that does everything that you need it to do. And to try and pick something that is going to do everything and none of it's not going to be able to do everything well. And so with the technology capabilities of the current time, it's oftentimes better to find a piece of software that does that one piece of the process better than anyone else and get it talking with the rest of your systems. And so what I do at Strategic is I look for opportunities for us to expand our offerings to our customers through either products that we developed ourselves over the years for the QAD space, or third-party products that can be integrated in with the ERP system. Things like Avalara for taxes, or iPurchase for purchasing, ETQ for quality, those sorts of things. So we're always on the lookout for how can we, help our customers really maximize the value of their enterprise systems. We changed our branding this year to bringing enterprise systems full circle, and that's a big part of my vision here at Strategic is to help people have a holistic ecosystem of enterprise technology that really supports their business and allows them to leverage their human capital in ways that are uniquely human. So for instance, working with the accounts payable department, do you want to have an AP department that's keying in every invoice that comes in the door, or do you want to automate the repetitive part and let them work on the exceptions as they come in, that kind of thing?
So obviously your time in the industry has guided you to where you're at, and having this holistic view or understanding the nuances of the different platforms and the limitations to some degree. And, the exciting part I have is when I line you up with a customer and we start talking about problems they might be having, you've lived it, but you also you're providing multiple options for people to get to a solution that might fit their organization, because size matters, industry vertical matters. As we look at that, what are some of the most common, products that Strategic's developed to help customers with these gaps?
Yeah, so the two that first come to mind on that is that we have a product called Enterprise Banking Solution, that has been one of our best-selling products for many years at this point. It allows for people to connect their Q80 ERP financials to the bank that they're working with for the purposes of sending AP payment data, whether it be ACH or check or wire, positive pay, bringing down data like cleared checks and bank reconciliation data, as well as being able to work with lockbox services on the AR side and that sort of thing. Again, things that remove manual steps in the day-to-day. Every one of our customers has an AP department. Hopefully most of them have an AR department as well, but everybody's paying bills. And so if we can take as much of the repetitive steps out of the way, it's good for efficiency, it's good for resource utilization, it's good for fraud prevention. There's a lot of reasons to go in that direction. And actually, as we'll be unveiling at this user group, we just onboarded a new partner to extend that EBS to take the how do we pay out of that.
Oh, wow.
Out of that
Full
question,
circle.
full circle. Like we just send, the company's called Corpay, and we'll just send them, okay, I want to pay these invoices to these vendors, and they will go and figure out what's the most cost-effective way for delivering that payment, whether it be a check or an ACH or a virtual credit card, to keep your spend in AP down to the minimum. Mm-hmm. So that's something that we're excited to continue to evolve that EBS platform. We got some exciting plans for 2024 on that as well. Another product that we saw a lot of that's really resonated in the manufacturing space is our SIG EDI tool. So we've had managed EDI practice at Strategic for forever. Q80 supported EDI since EDI was EDI,
Right.
And a traditional EDI setup is very complicated, multiple layers, multiple vendors to pay, multiple points of failure, that sort of thing. And our EDI engineers figured out a way to reduce all that down to single program, single map translation that has really provided a lot of value to the customers that are using it, and it works well with our managed offering as well. So those are two of the big ones that we have.
The two that you mentioned, I don't think unless you've lived in those roles, people realize how much manual effort is involved, like how much time this frees up, and what cost benefit to the company it really is. A lot of times, for EDI, for example, it's a major undertaking to create maps, to manage exceptions, to do ASNs to customers, and the same thing with AP and AR. Unless you're in that department, you don't realize how much hand keying, manual entry, and errors can happen. And unless you've walked a mile, they're not going to understand. So,
and also what I've seen is when you have that kind of traditional multiple vendor setup where you have here, this guy's doing the van part and this person's taking care of the translation and this company's taking and all of a sudden you want to set up a new supplier or a new customer or something, and now I'm going to have multiple parties involved in getting that set up, and one of them has a queue that's 6 months long before they can get to it. By really consolidating that down allows you to be more agile.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really a key trait of successful companies in the 2020s. If COVID taught us anything, it's the companies that were the most nimble, the most agile, were the ones that did the best.
And that are still here.
And they're still here, to wit, So agility is really important.
So Walter, as we look at your position at Strategic and how you're helping lead our solutions, our technology solutions and offerings, and we generally bring in with customers, whether it be in reviews or in net new opportunities when we're talking, what are we forecasting or looking at to be a total solution for a customer? Because in a lot of cases, like you said, one product doesn't do everything. Right. And understanding, it might not be right away that we install these gap fills or these add-on products or third party or best of breed, however you want to call them. And there's a roadmap for making sure that the client knows that these are there, because there's going to be a point where, like you said, the effort is going to be too much, and to stay nimble and flexible, you're going to have to adopt these. Is there any other products you're thinking of that we want to mention today before we wrap this up and have another one with a customer testimonial later about one of these products and saving them?
Sure.
Yeah.
So we have a number of integration adapters that help keep services that you may be using communicating with your Q80 ERP that can again help reduce the amount of steps that your team is having to do. For instance, one of the ones that we've sold a lot of is the integration with Concur Expense. And that's a great start on a roadmap toward, automating your payables, right? That's a fairly, low investment, solves a specific issue.
That's a high labor, right?
Yep. And because the other, kind of what that workflow looks like without it is somebody's got to go pull a report out of Concur, put it into Excel, reformat it into something that QAD can read, usually consolidate things. It can take quite a bit of time. We can just handle that for you. And then once you get the taste of what that automation looks like, then we can start talking about other automations for all the invoices that are coming in, and then talk about paying them and all of that. So that roadmap idea is really important. You don't want to take on too much too fast. Mm-hmm. Rome wasn't built in a day, but kind of to see what the overall vision is, right?
Yeah.
And also
phasing your automation, absolutely.
Exactly. It can kind of help, keep your team motivated too.
Okay. Well, when people listen to this, and hopefully they find it very interesting on these areas that they can take some pain away from their team, reach out to Strategic Information Group. We'd love to talk to you more about it.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you for your time, Walter.
Yep. Hi, I'm Walter Little, Technology Solutions Manager at Strategic Information Group. Following on the conversation that I had with Andrew earlier, wanted to do a partner spotlight with our newest partner, Corpay, who's providing an interesting service in the payment end of the AP automation space. So I'd like to introduce you to Mark Penserini, who comes to us from Corpay to talk about that solution and how it might be a great fit for your business. Hey, Mark.
Hi, Walter. Good to be here today. Thank you. So first, a little bit about Corpay. We've been in the payment automation space for about 15 years now. Actually, not about 15 years. But pretty excited to have this partnership and this relationship. I mean, our goal is always to provide the payment solution that's going to optimize and hopefully bring a lot of operational efficiencies to your customers. And by the way we do that is when that payment run, instead of sending that payment run to a printer, that payment run goes through you and directly to us, and then we're able to make the B2B payments directly to the vendors electronically. So it cuts down a lot of checks, it cuts down a lot of printing and reconciliation and that kind of stuff. But the three things I think we provide most is fraud protection, because we're going to take on the responsibility for making those payments on behalf of your customer. So their banking information isn't on anything, which is, I think, a great benefit today.
It's huge, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big deal when you start seeing the number of fraud cases and the amount of money that's being stolen every year. It's just through the roof. It's ridiculous. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is we provide a lot of operational efficiencies, right? The AP staff isn't having to deal with all of the check runs and the managing of those, and the vendor calling and say, the dog ate my check, now I got to stop payment, I've got to reissue. All of that goes away because we're providing all the vendor support. So for us to partner in this way, I think just brings a lot of additional support for your customers' AP staff, which potentially could mean they don't need to add another FTE while they're growing. Right? And then the last thing, again, is just the optimizing of those payments. If you look at today, again, because of fraud, if I send a vendor a virtual card, which is really just a credit card without plastic, and they can run that on their point of sale system, that's the fastest, most efficient way for that vendor to get their money. Cash flow is king today, so their ability now to process that card and put the money directly into their bank account is even faster than ACH. Everybody goes, oh, ACH is the fastest. No, actually, card's the fastest. So cash flow is very important to vendors, and the faster they can get it and the most secure way they can get it is by utilizing that virtual card. Well, the exciting part about that, just like today, if you have a card, you probably have some kind of cash back option, right? Or you get something back on that card. Well, we now can turn an AP department from a cost center to a revenue center because they're going to get a piece of that cash back. right? So that makes a win-win for everybody. The revenue, the AP department now is actually generating some rebates from all those card transactions. Their AP staff isn't dealing with managing vendor data and banking information and that kind of stuff, because guess what? ACH fraud is the biggest thing on the rise since COVID, right? It's gone through the roof. Well, if you take that out of their hands and they don't have to deal with that anymore, now your staff can be much more strategic in the work they're doing. And they don't have to deal with all this banking information and storing that and making sure that it's secure. So all of that goes away. So now their cost center costs go down because their hard costs have gone down. They're not writing checks. They're not paying for all of that. They've got higher operational efficiencies, and they've got fraud protection. All of those things together, I think, make this a great partnership, which in return is going to build the relationship stronger with the end customer. So I'm very excited to be here. This is the first conference I've been at. I think it's going to be a fun ride.
I think so too. And I remember when we first started talking about a potential partnership, and we already have the enterprise banking solution that we've been integrating with individual banks for many years, and that that helps, and that you're not printing out the checks anymore, and you're having the bank take care of it. But this takes that to a whole nother level. Because now, like you said, we're not having to maintain, the end customer doesn't have to maintain the banking information anymore. They don't even need to determine how they're going to pay, because even with our automation that we already have, the AP department still needs to know, am I paying this vendor with a check? Am I paying this vendor by wire? Is this one ACH, and so on? And then the other thing is that, earlier this year, Silicon Valley Bank, when it failed, we had a good number of customers that were connected to SVB. And while the end of the story was that they had continuity the entire time, we had maybe about half of our SVB customers were saying, I don't want to stick around for this story and move to Bank of America or JP Morgan or what have you. And that became a whole nother, setup with a whole nother bank. And so, the nice thing with Corpay is if you were in that situation, you go into the portal, you change your banking information, and you still have your automation. So that was another thing that was really, interesting there too. The other thing that I think is unique to Corpay in terms of how you do the virtual credit cards, many of the banks offer SUA cards as well. But the difference being is that, Bank of America, for example, is interested in setting a virtual card for their customers as a way for them to make money potentially on interest. So as I understand it, a B of A card is still like having a regular credit card. You get the statement at the end of the month. And have to pay it. So that's not really saving you any time, because now you just added another reconciliation workflow into your month, whereas Corpay is leveraging the credit card infrastructure as a payment instrument, but it's really more like a debit card, and that the funds are withdrawn with your good funds model. So, there's just so much to like about Corpay that we're really excited to bring you on board as an extension of our existing EBS solution. So, and you being backed by FleetCor, to a Fortune 1000 company. So just really, really happy to have you. Any other thoughts that you have about Corpay?
Yeah, well, again, to your point, we're bank agnostic, right? They're not having to do anything. And the other nice thing is, like you said, when they go in and pick their invoices and pick the vendors they want to pay, they're not having to determine who gets paid in what way. We're going to do that. We're going to optimize the payment based on the vendors that are in our network. So we have 3.8 million vendors in our network. So a high percentage of those are already being paid by card, high percentage by ACH, and the rest are by check. And so, automatically, a lot of those vendors are already going to be in our network and are already going to be set up. But the customer doesn't have to do any of that anymore. You just generate your payment run and be done with it, which is the best part of the whole deal. The other thing, too, is we do international payments all in the same payment run. So we're a global payments company, which means, again, for the customer, they're not having to go, I got to do a payment run for this, and I got to do a payment run for this, and then I've got to figure out my international payments, and I've got to figure out the currency exchange, and then I got to create a payment run for that, and I got to typically do some kind of wire. Well, we do all of that within the same payment run. saves a ton of time and a ton of money, and I think will just in the long run just streamline the AP process for your customers, and again just strengthen that relationship that you have with them. So we're very excited to be part of the family, and I'm looking forward to this journey with you.
On that note about how do we pay the customers, you bring up a good point, and that maybe I've been paying a particular vendor with a paper check for all this time, and never had the time or the inclination to ask that vendor, do you take other forms of payment? Maybe the vendor would prefer an ACH or takes a credit card or something like that. We just never thought to ask, didn't have time. Corpay is evaluating that every single time with their automated algorithm, and that's part of how it saves our customers money, right? Is because, I remember being shown, what the actual cost of paying by check is, and it's like minimum $4.
Yeah.
Right, per.
Yeah, it's probably between, again, 15 years of data, so we've got a lot of data, but it's typically going to be between $4 and $20.
Yeah.
So, and everybody goes, oh, that seems really high, but if you think about, the process of generating that check, once you push the button to say, I'm going to pay this vendor, you got to have check stock, you got to have printers, you got to have ink, you got to have an envelope. Somebody's got to take that off the printer. They've got to go get it signed. Then they've got to fold it. Then they've got to stuff it. Then they've got to put it in the envelope.
Pay the postage.
Put a stamp on it, which is 66 cents alone,
At
right?
Minimum.
Yeah. And now you got to mail that. And then the biggest part is you got to wait for the vendor to get it, cash it, so it clears your bank so you can do the reconciliation. Well, it doesn't take long to get to $4.
And then you're paying a positive pay service fee.
And you're paying a positive pay. So it doesn't take long to get to $4, right?
So you go to ACH, okay, that's better. Maybe it's $2.
Yeah.
Still $2.
Yeah, and again, the reality is that if you're doing ACH with your bank, you're still on the hook for any fraud issues, right? And we've heard the stories. I think last year alone, it was 1.8 billion that was actually stolen through fraud, through ACH fraud. Well, that's only what we know today, too. That doesn't mean everybody's been telling everybody, right? So a lot of people don't want to share that kind of stuff. But you think about all of that money that was lost, and you can't get it back, and the bank isn't going to take on that responsibility. If you initiate that notch file to say, I want to take money from my account and push it into this person's bank account, you're on the hook for that, right? So that's, I think, one of the hugest things that we provide is that fraud protection, because no longer does your customer have to do a notch file.
Right.
So all of that, I think, just enhances the product offering.
And plus, when they can get paid with a virtual credit card, all the processing fees get shifted to the vendor, so it's zero, and maybe even a rebate, depending.
That's right.
So that's a really big deal. And so just lots of different things to think about. You guys have a beautiful solution here. And we're really looking forward to seeing if it can be something that our customers would benefit from. We do have, through this process, something called Corpay Match, which is where if you're interested in exploring Corpay and how it might be helpful for your business, we can collect some data from you about your current state of AP, run it through a calculator based on all of the data that Corpay's collected over the last 15 years, and be able to tell you exactly what we project the ROI to be. So if that's something that's interesting to you as a customer, please reach out to us at Strategic, and we would love to get that set up for you and help you turn your AP from a cost center to a revenue center. Thanks, Mark.
You bet. Thanks.